we've got these three theories. He obviously did not choose to get out because, he just thought it was good for the party. And yeah, sure, I raised all this money and I gave up 1.5 years of my life and I had plans to take on the most ambitious job in the world. But, I'm just going to give it up. That's okay. It's better if I just give it up. No, I don't think so. He could have racked up more delegates. He could have had a stronger hand to play at the DNC if we get to a contested convention. So someone offered him something. Someone could have offered him something pretty big. We don't know. Could have even been vice president. Maybe. I'm not saying it's definitely vice president. I'm just saying he had to have been offered something pretty good to get out now. Now, the VP play is possible because Pete Buttigieg made so much of his candidacy about how terrible Mike Pence is over his alleged homophobia. So Mayor Pete realized the way to give himself a national profile and win cred in the Democratic Party was to pretend that he was an oppressed homosexual who was always, persecuted for his sexual preferences. And the governor of Indiana, while Pete Buttigieg is mayor of South Bend, was Mike Pence, who's a Christian. So it was an easy scapegoat to say, Mike Pence is a horrible homophobe, he's persecuting me. Grant you, Pete Buttigieg and Mike Pence have always had a very nice relationship. Mike Pence has been very flattering to him in public. He's called him personally to help out, but didn't matter. Buttigieg realized that's how he was going to frame it. So Buttigieg has a pretty strong hand to play here as a potential VP nominee because he can say, I will show up to the VP debate and I will debate that troglodyte, knuckle-dragging, retrograde, homophobe Mike Pence. And that could play very well to the Democratic base, who are the only people who are going to watch the VP debate, but it probably wouldn't hurt the ticket generally among people who maybe don't want LGBTQ politics to be at the forefront because very few people in the mainstream watch the VP debate. So there's a chance it could have been the VP. If it's VP or something like it, and that's very much possible, the question is, was it Bernie or Biden? Right, a lot of people right now are saying that Bernie is the one who offered Pete Buttigieg some big position in the administration. Why would Bernie do this? Bernie is still leading in the delegate count. Bernie is still the front runner in the Democratic nomination. Even though Joe Biden blew him out of the water in South Carolina, Bernie is still up overall. One reason that Bernie might have offered Pete something is because Pete would balance the ticket, right? Bernie is this hardcore radical socialist. Pete Buttigieg is pretending to be a moderate, so if you're just looking at it, it looks like a balanced ticket. But actually, Pete Buttigieg is a pretty radical guy whose father is a founding member of a major communist academic institution. And Pete Buttigieg wrote a very flattering, wonderful paper about how great Bernie Sanders is in high school. So there's, underneath the surface, a real radicalism there. It would look, in some ways, like a unity ticket. You think of Reagan-Bush in 1980. Right? Reagan represented the conservatives on the right, and George H.W. Bush represented the Rockefeller Republicans, the liberal Republicans, what we would call today the rhinos. And they fought this really tough primary, and people forget George H.W. Bush, who became Reagan's vice president, actually was the one who invented the term voodoo economics to criticize Ronald Reagan's economic policies. So they have this really tough campaign, and then they come together. It's a unity ticket. You get the whole party going together. I don't think it's really that, right? Now, if it were Biden who offered Pete Buttigieg something, then you're getting two self-styled moderates, which doesn't expand the base. But I still don't think it's that. I think this race is fundamentally different than something like 1980, Reagan and Bush, because the two frontrunners in this race are extremely old. Ronald Reagan was an old candidate at his time too. And the two serious candidates in the Democratic race right now, Biden and Bernie, and actually the third maybe serious candidate, Bloomberg, are all almost 10 years older than Ronald Reagan was in 1980. So you've got these really, really old candidates. Bernie Sanders had a heart attack on the campaign trail. Joe Biden can barely finish an English sentence. The VP actually matters here. And so the trouble is, if you have a unity-type ticket, let's say it's Bernie Sanders, right, as the radical, and then Pete Buttigieg as the moderate. The Bernie supporters don't really like Pete Buttigieg that much. The Pete Buttigieg supporters don't really like Bernie Sanders that much. Are the Bernie Sanders supporters really going to show up and say, all right, we're going to vote for this ticket, even though in 5 minutes we might end up with a Buttigieg presidency, which is the least preferable outcome that we could possibly hope for? I don't think so. Same thing on the other side, with Joe Biden. Let's say Joe Biden picks some crazy radical for his vice presidential pick. Is that really going to drag the Bernie or the Biden voters out there? I don't think so, because they're going to be just as nervous with the VP as they would be if Bernie Sanders were the nominee. So it does seem more likely that whatever the offer was, the offer didn't come from Bernie. It would have come from the same segment of the Democratic Party. And so for Pete, who's presenting himself as a moderate, that means it's more likely that it came from Biden. Thank you for tuning into the Daily Wire, one of the fastest growing conservative media outlets in the country. If you enjoyed this video, and really, even if you didn't, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on any of our content.